I remember the day I came to life, if you can call it that. I was just a pencil then, resting quietly among dozens of others. But something was different. The old pencil maker picked me up with hands that trembled from years of careful craftsmanship. He looked at me like I was more than wood and graphite, like I had a purpose waiting to unfold. I didn't know why he chose me. I didn't even know what being chosen meant. But as he brought me closer to his workbench, something inside me stirred, a quiet spark, a silent promise of destiny. Before he sealed me in a box, the pencil maker spoke. His voice was soft, aged like parchment, but full of weight. "There are 5 truths you must remember," he said, as if I were a living soul. I listened, not with ears, but with something deeper. His eyes, though clouded, pierced right into my wooden frame. "Never forget these, little one," he said. "If you do, you'll lose yourself before you even begin." I didn't understand yet, but his words curled into me like a whisper of wind through trees. Something about them felt important, felt final. "The first thing," he began, "is that you will do great things, but only if you place yourself in another's hands." His words lingered in the air like smoke. I didn't know what it meant to belong to someone else, to be used, but a flicker of fear rose within me. What if the wrong hands picked me? What if they broke me, or worse, forgot me? Still, his gaze held something stronger than fear. Hope, purpose. He believed in what I could become, not for myself, but through others. That thought alone made my graphite heart beat faster. "Sometimes," he continued, "you'll go through pain, sharpening." The words struck me like lightning. I imagined blades scraping away my wood, whittling me down to nothing. "It'll hurt," he said, "but it'll make you better." I wanted to cry out, to protest. Why would I need pain to be useful? But then I saw his hands again, marked by splinters, cuts, time. He had endured his own sharpening, and he was still standing, still crafting beauty. Maybe the pain wasn't punishment. Maybe it was preparation. A way of turning what's dull into something sharp enough to leave a mark. "There will be mistakes," he said next, leaning closer as if the world itself might try to silence him. Smudges, wrong lines, even regrets. A chill went through me. I feared failure more than pain. What if I ruined something forever? What if I made a mark that couldn't be undone? But then he smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "You can always erase," he said. "You can try again." And suddenly the fear loosened its grip. I wasn't expected to be perfect. I was only expected to keep trying, to write, erase, and write again until the message rang true. He lifted me gently, almost reverently. "The most important part of you is inside," he said, tapping my core. "Not the paint, not the wood, not the eraser. What's inside you, that's where your power lies." It was a strange feeling to consider my inside more valuable than the surface, but I believed him, because he looked at me not like an object but like a soul with potential. In that moment, I understood something beautiful. I didn't need to shine on the outside. I needed to stay strong and steady within. That was where my real worth lived. "And lastly," he said, voice softer now, as if each word might break, "whatever surface you touch, leave your mark." Those words echoed inside me like a bell in a hollow church. Even if no one notices, even if it's messy, just keep writing. My breath, if I had breath, caught in my throat. Was that my mission, to keep writing no matter what? It felt like a vow, sacred and unspoken. I promised him then, not with words but with a stillness deep in my core. I would write, always. Whether in darkness or light, I would leave my mark behind. He wrapped me in a thin piece of cloth, but his hands hesitated before placing me in the box. For a moment, the world stopped. Time stretched. His eyes, tired but tender, met mine one last time. "You'll forget this," he whispered, "when things get hard. But remember anyway. Remember what you are." I wanted to speak, to assure him I'd carry every word, but silence was all I had. So I held his wisdom tight, carving it into the very grain of my being. I wasn't just a tool. I was a story waiting to be written. The box closed and darkness swallowed me. I was still. I was scared, but I wasn't empty. His words wrapped around me like armor. Somewhere out there, hands were waiting. Hands that would guide me, press me to page, reveal my purpose. I didn't know where I'd go or who I'd meet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't ordinary. I had meaning. I had potential. I had a path carved by wisdom and belief. And even in the silence of that wooden tomb, I could feel it, the hum of destiny just beginning to awaken. I heard the faint thud of footsteps. A new voice. A child, perhaps. The box shifted, tilted, opened. Light flooded in, blinding and warm. Fingers reached in and lifted me skyward. For a moment, I saw the world, so big, so strange. My heart thudded in rhythms of graphite and hope. This was it. My first moment in someone else's hand. I didn't know what they'd write. I didn't know if it would be beauty or chaos. But I knew it mattered. Every stroke, every pause. And I was ready. Ready to be used. Ready to become what I was meant to be. The child held me tightly, their fingers slightly trembling. I could feel their nervousness as they placed me gently on a blank sheet of paper. For a moment, I lay still, uncertain. Would they know how to use me? Would their grip be too tight or too loose? But then, with a hesitant stroke, I moved. My tip scratched across the paper, creating the first line of a story I didn't yet understand. There was hesitation, yes, but also wonder. Each movement was clumsy, yet sincere. And somehow I knew this was exactly the beginning I was meant for. As the child continued to write, something inside me awakened further. The strokes became steadier, the words more confident. With every sentence, I left a piece of myself behind, pressed into the page like a whisper from my soul. But then, a sudden pause. The child frowned, then scribbled something out, an error. My eraser rubbed furiously, clearing the space. I feared they'd give up, that I'd be tossed aside for failing them. But they didn't. They just stared at the paper, thinking, learning. And in that silence, I realized even mistakes could teach, even errors were part of the journey. Time passed. The child grew stronger, more expressive. Together, we filled notebooks, pages of dreams, drawings, and diary entries. I was there through it all. When they laughed, I danced across the page. When they cried, I soaked in their sorrow, carving quiet emotions into every line. I had seen their thoughts before they spoke them aloud. I had felt their world from the inside out. But then came a day I feared. My tip dulled. My body shortened. Each sharpening scraped away more of me. I was disappearing bit by bit, and yet I kept writing. I had to. One day they left me on the desk, forgotten. The others, pens, markers, mechanical rivals, sat around me in fresh packaging, gleaming with pride. I lay still, splintered, barely held together. Dust began to settle on my eraser. I wondered if that was it, if my story had ended in silence. The drawer opened now and then, but they never picked me. I watched from the shadows as new instruments took my place. The child had grown. And me? I was a relic of their past. I ached, not from use, but from absence. Was I no longer worthy to write? But then, one quiet evening, they returned. Now a teenager, almost unrecognizable. Their eyes scanned the drawer and to my surprise landed on me. Gently, almost reverently, they picked me up. I saw something in their gaze. Nostalgia, maybe gratitude. Their fingers still remembered how to hold me. They didn't say a word, but I felt the energy, the memories rush back like wind in my wood. With a sigh, they placed me on fresh paper and began to draw. Not just any picture. A portrait. A pencil maker, an old man with wise eyes. Tears welled as my story came full circle. Each line of that portrait felt sacred. I remembered the pencil maker's touch, his voice, his truth. And now, through this teenager's hand, I was telling his story. Not with spoken words, but with strokes and smudges and quiet reverence. My marks were fewer now, my graphite almost gone, but every curve, every shade was made with love. This was my final masterpiece, I knew it. My strength was fading, but my purpose had never been clearer. I wasn't just drawing a man. I was honoring a legacy. A promise made in wood, kept in every word and sketch I'd ever left behind. The teenager placed the portrait on the windowsill and smiled. Then, looking at me one last time, they whispered, "Thank you." 2 words, but they carried the weight of our entire journey. I wanted to respond, to say, "No, thank you for believing in me." But I had no voice, only marks on paper to speak for me. And maybe that was enough. The drawer closed gently. I remained on the desk, resting in quiet pride. I was no longer new. I was no longer perfect, but I was something better. I was remembered, and in being remembered, I had truly lived. Dust returned, days passed, yet I didn't feel forgotten. Sometimes the teenager would glance my way, smile, then return to their work. New tools surrounded me now, but none could replace the bond we'd shared. I wasn't envious, I was content. I had served my purpose. I had been the voice of a child's dreams, a companion through fear, and the hand behind a tribute to a man who saw greatness in silence. The world outside the window kept changing. But here, in this small corner, I had become more than a pencil. I had become a part of someone's story. Eventually I broke, snapped clean in two by time and gravity. Yet there was no sadness, only peace. My halves were gently placed inside a memory box beside the drawing of the pencil maker. My journey had ended, but my story would live on, in notebooks and sketches, in the heart of the one who had held me. They had written more than words with me. They had discovered themselves. And in doing so, I had discovered what I truly was, not just wood and lead, but hope, possibility, a silent guide through the maze of growth, pain, and transformation. And so if you ever feel small, used, or forgotten, remember me. Remember the pencil who started with a promise and ended with a purpose. You too are being sharpened by life. And even though it may hurt, even though the marks you make feel messy or unwanted, they matter. They shape stories. They build legacies. What's inside you is your truest gift. Let it speak. Leave your mark, no matter how quiet, no matter how faint, because one day someone will look back and see your journey, and it will inspire them to begin their own.